These are the lecture notes for Chapter 1 of Anatomy and Physiology. This chapter is the human body and orientation. There are actually two groups of slides. This first group has 60 slides. I will try to go through them quickly, but I'll go slower on the ones that I think need a little bit more explanation. So let's go ahead and put this in slideshow format. Excuse me. Okay, so why this matters is this chapter is going to explain anatomical terminology. So it will explain regional terms, like for example, something that would be easy, the regional term for the armpit area is axillary, the axillary region. So we'll learn regional terminology for basically every area on the surface of the human body. And then we will learn directional terminology, which is really, really important to be able to explain where something is located using the proper directional terms. That's going to be important no matter which area of healthcare that you go into, if you're going into healthcare. There's a video called Why This Matters. If you want to watch this, you'll need to go back and watch it on the slides. Like, go to Moodle, choose the slideshow presentation, and just scroll to this. This is slide number 3 of the first set of slides. So if you want to watch this, excuse me. And then the actual definition of anatomy and physiology. Anatomy is the study of the structure of body parts and their relationship to one another. So we're emphasizing structure or form. This is where a lot of times we do a lot of our memorization, like memorizing the bones or memorizing the muscles. Physiology is the study of the function of body parts, how they work to carry out life-sustaining activities. So this is actually my favorite. You probably will learn that over time because I like to explain how things work a lot better than I like to just go over the names of things. That's just a little bit boring to me, but others of you will feel differently. So we're all different people. But my favorite is the physiology, but you can't have one without the other. The form or the structure determines the function, so they're interrelated. As far as the subdivisions of anatomy, when we refer to macroscopic anatomy or gross anatomy, we're talking about structures that can be visualized without a microscope. And microscopic anatomy means that we're using a microscope to see the structures. And we do this in cytology, or the study of cells. So when we look at individual cells, and histology, or the study of tissues, because tissues are actually groups of cells, so we're still looking at the cellular level. Developmental anatomy studies anatomical and physiological development throughout life. One area of developmental anatomy is called embryology, and that's the study of the developments that happen before birth. Oh, there's a term here, just making sure. To study anatomy, one must know anatomical terminology and be able to observe, manipulate, palpate, and that's just going to be touching, and like to palpate for something is just to touch the surface of the body, trying to feel for an organ or for some structure underneath the skin. And auscultate is sorry about that. Auscultate is to listen. So like for listening to heart sounds or listening to someone's breathing. All right, for physiology, you can study physiology based on organ systems. So renal physiology or cardiovascular physiology. Renal physiology would be the kidneys, and cardiovascular would be the heart and the blood vessels. And So let's move on. Okay, so you also need to understand that anatomy and physiology are inseparable. You can't just study anatomy or just study physiology and really understand either one. Function always reflects structure. So, or you could also say structure determines function. The principle of complementarity of structure and function, this is one of your learning objectives. Complementarity just means that they complement each other. What a structure can do depends on its form. What it can do is its physiology, and its form is its anatomy. So anatomy and physiology are complementary to each other. Here's an example explaining complementarity, and it's just showing you the incisors that are at the front teeth basically are sharp, and their structure is designed for cutting, for the function of cutting, whereas the molars in the back are designed for the function of grinding. So their structure determines their function. Now in section 1.2, you just need to learn the levels of organization from the smallest to the entire organism. In biology, we go all the way to the biosphere, but in general biology. But in anatomy, we'll stop with the whole organism, which would be the entire human. So the smallest level of organization will be an atom, like carbon. And molecules are going to be composed of different atoms. So we're going from atom to molecule, and then to organelles, which are the little, the small parts of the cell, like the mitochondria and the nucleus. And then you have individual cells, you have tissues, you have organs, and then you have organ systems, and then finally you have your organism. And here's a diagram that sort of illustrates it a little bit better. So these are atoms that it looks like to me the red ones are oxygen, the black one is carbon, and then the little blue ones are hydrogen. And this molecule here is carbon dioxide. The carbon's in the center and the two oxygens are on either end. And then this is a molecule of water. It's got an oxygen with two hydrogens attached and kind of bent downward. So molecules are combinations of atoms, and then organelles are combinations of large molecules. This organelle is a mitochondria. And then you have cells. This particular cell is a smooth muscle cell. And then you see many smooth muscle cells make smooth muscle tissue. And then we see an organ, a blood vessel, which counts as an organ, and it has many different tissue types, including a layer of smooth muscle tissue, as well as it has epithelial tissue and connective tissue. And the organs, the blood vessels, are combined with other organs to form the cardiovascular system, which is an organ system. It's combined with the heart and the blood vessels in the heart are combined together to form the cardiovascular system. And then all of the 11 organ systems form the organism. So these are the levels of structure. You need to know them in order. And I'm just going to say them one more time. In fact, let me make a slide. Sorry, sometimes it takes me a minute to figure out how to do it. Okay, I want to insert a new slide. All right, and over here I just want to say these are the levels of organization in order. Atom, molecule, and you see if you can do this as I'm doing it. Organelles, cell, tissue, organ, organ system. I'll fix this in a minute. Organism. Okay, and we want to Okay, so these are the levels of organization from atom to organism, from simplest to most complex, and you may be asked to do them from most complex down to simplest, but just make sure that you know them in order. Now we'll move on to the requirements for life. So all living things, and we do focus on humans in this class, but all living things need have necessary life functions. One of those is maintaining boundaries. In this case, we're talking about the plasma membrane maintains a boundary around each of our cells, and it prevents certain substances from crossing, allows certain substances to cross it, but then it prevents others from crossing. Movement, and that can be movement like walking, and it can also be movement like right now I'm moving my mouth to talk, but it's also movement internally, like the movement of blood through your blood vessels, the movement that occurs even inside of your cells, so it doesn't just mean walking, it doesn't just mean movements that you do with your limbs. Responsiveness, which is also sometimes called excitability, is just how we respond to stimuli. I think about first thing in the morning, I'm going to respond to my alarm because I definitely don't wake up on my own. I'm one that needs an alarm. So that alarm annoys me, but it does wake me up. And I respond by opening my eyes, moving in some way, probably getting up and walking either to the bathroom or to the kitchen. I do something, and a bright light is going to, make us kind of squint, say a bad word, just we respond to different things. We also respond to, our body responds to changes in different conditions, but we'll talk about that later with homeostasis. Then we have digestion. We have digestion, which, of course, is how we break down the molecules in the food that we eat. Metabolism refers to all the chemical reactions that occur in our cells, breakdown and build-up reactions. Excretion is just our removal of waste. That can be solid or liquid. It can be in the form of urine or sweat, but it's the removal of waste that if they built up, they would be toxic. Then there's reproduction and growth. Growth would also include, like stages of development. So there's all these notes on these different topics, but the main thing is that you understand that these are necessary for human life. All right, and then this last section says humans are multicellular. So to function, individual cells must be kept alive. And all of our cells depend on organ systems to meet their survival needs. So there are 11 organ systems. You need to, I'm going to skip this. You need to know their names and then just brief summaries of each one. So you need to know the integumentary system is referring to the skin, and some basic things like the integumentary system also includes the hair and the nails and some glands like sweat glands. And the basic function of the integumentary system, is protection, right? So it forms the external body covering, protects deeper tissues from injury. And then some other functions are the skin, we know, synthesizes vitamin D, houses sensory receptors to pain and pressure, and also the integumentary system. The skin houses the sweat glands and the oil glands. So basic things about each system. Then we have the skeletal system, which are our bones and our joints. The muscular system, referring to the skeletal muscles only, not the smooth and the cardiac. The nervous system, brain, spinal cord, and nerves. Endocrine system, and this is where I'll stop. I'll come back to it.